In the opening scene, an elderly man named Wang Fu, who is the guardian of magical gems, is telling a story about some magical gems called the Miraculous. According to his story, these magical gems have been granted to the world's greatest heroes to protect the world from evil. Among the gems, one is capable of turning anyone who possesses it into a terrifying monster, and in order to stop that evil, two rival heroes must rise and stand united, because together, they possess the ultimate power that's even stronger than death. In a local restaurant, a young lady named Marinette is preparing for school. Her father is excited to take her to school, but Marinette is afraid she'll be embarrassed in front of her friends. She escapes her father thanks to her mother, and after a word of advice from her mother, Marinette heads out. The scene transitions into a musical where Marinette reveals her insecurities about life and how she's so out of place in the world. She seems a bit clumsy, but has an active imagination and is convinced she'd go places if only she believed in herself. However, she can't seem to do that as she lacks any confidence in herself. Meanwhile, in another scene, we see a famous fashion designer named Gabriel Agresta entering a busy showroom. There's a lot of activity as the place is buzzing with photographers and fashion designers alike. At the same time, Marinette is making her way into her school. However, because of her clumsiness, she stumbles and spills coffee on a girl named Chloe, who seems popular in the school. Chloe throws a fit and the crowd gathers to watch the scene. But thanks to a girl named Alia, Marinette is saved from the rage of an angry socialite. Thanks to that, Marinette makes a new friend in Alia, and although she warns Alia about her clumsiness, Alia doesn't mind and sticks to her like glue. Every activity Marinette engages in that day ends up in failure, but Alia still stays with her. Next, we see Gabriel walking into the now empty showroom. He shows his regret about not being able to make a certain dress for his now deceased wife, Emily. He's holding a flowery gem in his hand, but as he looks at it, it gives him haunting memories. Back at school, Marinette and Alia say their goodbyes, and Marinette heads over to her locker. But unfortunately for her, Marinette is challenged by a still angry Chloe. Thanks to some quick thinking from Marinette, she manages to escape the socialite and makes her way over to the school library. Here, Marinette meets a rather handsome boy named Adrian. She is smitten by his beauty and can't seem to take her eyes off him. She hides behind the bookshelf and spies on him. She tries to get a closer glimpse of him, but then her clumsiness kicks in again, and she falls with a pile of books landing on her head. Adriani comes to her rescue, giving her a hand, and Marinette is even more smitten than before. She doesn't even realize when he leaves the library, and we see a despondent-looking Adrian walking away. Back at Gabriel's mansion, it's revealed that Gabriel is, in fact, Adriani's father. However, he doesn't seem to give his son any attention. Adrian, looking very sad, makes his way to an empty theater where he has memories of his deceased mother. At the same time, we see Gabriel in his private chambers staring at the flowery Miraculous in his hand. His goal is to possess the power that can bring his wife back to life. But according to the Kwame of his gem, only the Ladybug and CAT NOIR Miraculous possess the power to overcome death. However, the only way to summon them is when chaos ensues. Determined to bring back his wife, Gabriel chooses to lose himself and walk the path of chaos just so that he can see his wife again. At that very moment, Wang Fu senses that something is wrong. He chooses to release the gems of Ladybug and CAT NOIR to help fight the impending chaos. However, the two gems cannot seem to work together and escape the old man's establishment, disappearing in separate ways to choose their vessels. Just then, we see Marinette making her way back home from school when she stumbles upon Chloe again. Terrified of what might happen, Marinette makes her clumsy escape, trying to get as far away from Chloe as possible, but Chloe isn't backing down and gives chase. Just as old man Wang Fu is chasing the Ladybug Miraculous, Marinette is escaping the angry Chloe. But then, old man Wang Fu gets into some trouble and is about to be run over by a car. Luckily, Marinette was in the same location. She sees the old man is in trouble and disregarding her own life, Marinette jumps into action, saving the man from an untimely demise. Wang Fu is shocked by her selflessness. The Miraculous disappears into Marinette's backpack, and Wang Fu realizes that she must be the chosen vessel for Ladybug. The old man seems to be ranting about something. However, Marinette has other problems, and she makes herself scarce without giving it another thought. Back at Gabriel's home, Adriani is busy studying, but just then, a disturbance causes him to lose concentration. Looking around, Adriani tries to find the cause of the disturbance and notices a cat underneath his desk. He tries being nice to the creature, but it scampers off, leaving a strange ring in its wake. At the same time, in another scene, we see a rather plumb man who just got rejected after a proposal, running into an empty museum. Suddenly, a dark butterfly flutters around him and enters the ring he's holding, taking control of the man. He turns into a monster, and people begin running away for their lives. Meanwhile, Marinette, who had successfully escaped Chloe, finds herself in a strange building. Suddenly, the Ladybug gem appears, glowing with an ethereal light. Marinette is awed by this and follows the light. The gem then turns into a pair of earrings, which Marinette puts on her ears. Suddenly, the Kwami of the gem awakens, introducing herself to Marinette as Tiki, the Kwami of creation. However, Marinette is freaked out and backs away. The scene transitions into a musical where Tiki explains to Marinette how she is Ladybug and is needed whenever the world faces a threat. However, Marinette persistently looks down on herself, saying she's no hero and that Tiki has got the wrong person. But Tiki wouldn't back down and finally entered Marinette's body. Marinette looks into the mirror and is horrified, seeing the strange Ladybug costume she's wearing. The scene is taken back to the empty museum where we see an old night guard who was called in to inspect the place. He seems frustrated as there is nothing there to report, but just as he is about to leave, a huge glowing monster makes its appearance. Meanwhile, Ladybug is trying to understand her powers. A strange yo-yo-like object appears and entangles her, taking her toward the museum where the monster made its appearance. After a rather bumpy ride, Ladybug crashes into CAT NOIR, who happen to be just outside a painted glass window of the museum. They get tangled up and together, and after a moment of hanging upside down, they fall to the museum floor, CAT NOIR landing with Grace and Ladybug in an untidy heap. The two heroes get acquainted with one another, Ladybug trying to look like an actual hero and not some sidekick character, and CAT NOIR putting on some bravado to look cooler than he actually is. They don't seem to notice the monster stalking them from the shadows, and CAT NOIR, despite his bragging, fails to notice the huge gargoyle that appears behind him. They engage in a rather rough battle with the gargoyle and manage to drive it out of the building with CAT NOIR riding on its back and Ladybug clinging on for dear life. A crowd is watching, and we see Alia recording the scene. The two newbie heroes manage to drive the gargoyle to a nearby lake, and as they approach a tunnel, Ladybug loses her grip, while CAT NOIR drives the gargoyle into the tunnel. The situation seems under control for a while, but CAT NOIR quickly loses that edge and is being chased down the tunnel by the gargoyle. Meanwhile, Ladybug is getting the hang of her abilities, swinging her way towards CAT NOIR. The cat hero seems stuck, and a train is about to crush him, but thanks to Ladybug's quick thinking, she manages to save him from certain death, leaving that fate to the gargoyle who gets crushed by the train. Now it's CAT NOIR's turn to be smitten by the Ladybug, who seemed cool at the moment. The two heroes escape the police who seem to be searching for them, and at the same time, we see the dark butterfly that had possessed the Plum Man from earlier, leaving the man's body. Meanwhile, as CAT NOIR and Ladybug try to make their escape, Old Man Wang Fu makes his appearance. He explains to them about their powers, which are called Akumas, saying that Ladybug holds the power of creation, while CAT NOIR holds the power of destruction, and that they must unite if they are going to defeat the Akuma called Hawk Moth, who uses the power of hate and anger to create monsters. CAT NOIR and Ladybug go their separate ways, and while Ladybug can't stand CAT NOIR, the cat hero seems struck by her. He transitions into a musical, singing about his feelings for the girl he had just met, and how it had been a while since he revealed a genuine smile, and that perhaps he had finally found his incentive. Meanwhile, at the same time, we see Ladybug desperately running on the rooftops, trying to get home as fast as she can. Luckily, she makes it home in time before her father realizes that she'd been away. Adrian is at home, thinking about his time as CAT NOIR, fighting alongside Ladybug. His Kwami Plague reveals himself, and Adrian asks him for help to see Ladybug again, his impression of her radiant with warmth and admiration. Meanwhile, at that very same moment, we see Ladybug panicking from the encounter. Tiki reveals herself, and Marinette says she wants nothing to do with the cat hero or even the Kwami itself. Her impression of CAT NOIR is quite the opposite of his impression of her, and when she tries to get rid of the Kwami, she quickly realizes that it's impossible. She realizes that getting rid of the Kwami through force is impossible, so Marinette reveals her fear to Tiki and begs the Kwami to leave her alone, and so Tiki disappears. Back at Gabriel's mansion, we see Gabriel talking with his Kwami. He is bent on bringing his wife back and transitions into a musical, where he gets into an argument with his Kwami. He transforms into his Akuma Hawk Moth, and while his Kwami tries to tell him that he is using the power the wrong way, Hawk Moth doesn't listen and proceeds with his obsession to bring back his wife. We see him walking towards a prison cell where he releases the inmates and then uses his abilities to take control of them, determined to bring chaos down on the world, so that he can obtain the power over death from Ladybug and CAT NOIR. The following day, Marinette is hanging out with Alia, just as Adrian is with his friend Nino. Unknown to them, a bank robbery is underway by the very same criminals, a mimer and a magician, that Hawk Moth released the previous night. The cops are on the scene and the news is being broadcast via the news. Marinette's parents are at home, watching the news, and Marinette's father, Tom, starts to get worried for his daughter, who is in the vicinity of the crime scene. His wife tries to reassure him, but he doesn't listen and goes after his daughter anyway. Meanwhile, Adrian is asking for love advice from his friend Nino, and Alia is seen advising Marinette as well. Just then, the two groups of friends meet up, and the scene gets awkward very quickly, but they are unaware of Tom's presence behind a bunch of balloons. Nino and Alia excuse them, and Tom's presence is soon discovered. At that moment, Adrian receives a call from his dad, who tells him to leave the fair and come home, because it wasn't safe at the fair. Much to Adrian's dismay, he excuses himself from Marinette and her father, making Marinette feel embarrassed about her dad. At the same time, Alia and Nino get on a roller coaster ride, and Chloe shows up on the scene with her friend Sabrina just when the villains arrive. They go on a rampage, causing destruction and chaos everywhere, intentionally waiting for the heroes to appear. Seeing the destruction, Marinette decides to face her fears. She starts singing about her fears and how she needs to face them head-on. Tiki finally appears, and after giving her a bit of advice, Marinette accepts her newfound powers and they merge, bringing Ladybug out into the scene. She sees a baby in trouble and rushes in to save the baby, but it's all just a trick of the villains. Ladybug quickly gets into trouble, but that's when Cat Noir appears, saving her from her predicament. They realize that together, their powers are stronger and decide to work together to stop the villains. Chloe and Sabrina seem to be in trouble, and Cat Noir rushes in to save them. However, he needs a helping hand as the villains are hot on his trail. As things get more out of hand, Ladybug comes in and saves Chloe. She then proceeds to save Alia and Nino from the magician. They combine their strength and together manage to defeat the two villains. The power of the dark butterflies leaves the villains, and Ladybug uses her powers to free the butterflies from the dark energy. Ladybug and Cat Noir become known heroes, and together, they bring down villain after villain, frustrating Hawk Moth's efforts. They become famous, and while Cat Noir is crushing on Ladybug, Marinette is crushing on Adrian, but they are completely unaware of their true identities. Ladybug and Cat Noir are staring out into the cityscape at night. As they tease each other and engage in mock battles, their bond seems to be growing stronger. And while Cat Noir seems to have completely fallen for Ladybug, she, unaware of his true identity, has her eyes on someone else and doesn't reciprocate Cat Noir's love. The following day, Marinette is ready to ask Adrian out, but Chloe decides to bully her at that moment, saying Adrian would only go out to the ball with her. However, Marinette is no longer like before and doesn't shy away from Chloe anymore, giving her a smart retort and putting her in her place. That night, she's getting ready to ask Adrian out to the ball, but Tiki warns her of an impending danger. She gets into her Ladybug costume, thinking she will hurry and get back to preparing for the ball. She gets to the scene, and it looks like Cat Noir has been captured and taken away. However, it was just a little prank, and Cat Noir is seen staring down at her mockingly. Cat Noir takes her to a theater where he opens up to her about his mother and his fears. Thanks to a piece of advice from Ladybug, he chooses to let go of his fears, and they both sing a duet together. They share the moment and look to be closer than ever. He reveals how Ladybug saves the world with her mask, but the girl behind it saves his heart. He confesses that he's falling for her and leans in for a kiss, but she rejects it and says to him that her heart is already with someone else. Cat Noir reverts to Adrian after she leaves and is devastated. He goes home where his father is waiting for him. However, he's upset with his father and walks out on him. The following day, Marinette musters up the courage to ask Adrian out to the ball, but devastated from the previous night's rejection, Adrian politely turns her down. Marinette is heartbroken, and Chloe uses the opportunity to torment her. Her heart shattered. She locked herself away in her room. Meanwhile, Hawk Moth is planning another attack on the city, but this time, he's going all out. Ladybug arrives on the scene and is shocked to see the scale of the destruction. Cat Noir is nowhere to be seen, but it turns out he is busy sulking in his room. However, thanks to a little bit of motivation from Plague, he snaps out of it and rushes out to the scene. Ladybug seems to be in a fix, but luckily, Cat Noir shows up in time to save her. He rushes out on his own, forgetting that they are only stronger together. He attempts an attack on Hawk Moth, but he completely fails and falls from the high tower toward his demise. Ladybug rushes in to save him, but Hawk Moth doesn't give them a moment of rest. While Cat Noir is still unconscious, Hawk Moth takes away Ladybug's Kwami. While Ladybug is dealing with her struggles, trying to regain her strength, Hawk Moth is attacking Cat Noir, bent on ending him once and for all. After a brief moment of motivation from Tiki, Marinette regains a bit of her strength and saves Cat Noir from the finishing blow. That's when Hawk Moth sees the person behind Cat Noir's mask. He is devastated to find that it's none other than his son, Adrian. He transforms from Hawk Moth back to Gabriel, and Adrian is mortified to find that his dad is the villain behind all the destruction. Gabriel is brokenhearted because he blindly pursued his obsession and didn't realize it until he was on the verge of losing his son. Father and son reconcile, and Marinette gets back Tiki. She returns Hawk Moth's flowery gem to Wang Fu and leaves to take care of the wreckage. After reassuring the people, she uses her power of creation to fix all the wreckage before returning home to her parents. Marinette arrives at the ball that night and is challenged by Chloe. However, she isn't feeling the least bit afraid anymore. Adrian is seen standing alone, still longing for Ladybug. He doesn't know her true identity, but Marinette, who has discovered his true identity, enters the scene and calls him by his superhero alias. She reveals her identity to him, and Adrian cannot believe his luck. He reveals a happy smile, and they end the story with a kiss.